Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to Creemee Cast. I'm live here in Bean Studios in the center of the universe, Northfield, Vermont. I have a pretty special guest on here today, as always. I have Anne Lepeltier, the chairwoman of the Vermont Libertarian Party. Welcome to Bean Studios in Northfield. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we have, I'm sure, plenty to talk about today. I know we want to talk about the Libertarian National Convention, which you attended. When was that? A couple weeks ago?
Memorial Day weekend.
Okay, so not this last weekend, but the weekend before.
Right.
And we know the infamous he who must not be named, Donald Trump, attended that.
Sure did.
And yeah, that was. It sounded like it was a pretty interesting experience for all who were there.
Yes.
And some of the footage that I saw was pretty incredible. But before we get into that, I just want to talk a little about you
Sure.
and who you are.
Sure.
And how maybe you lived in Vermont for a while, or how you ended up here.
Yeah.
And because I don't know. This is an interview live. So did you grow up in Vermont?
I did.
Okay.
Yep.
Where was that?
I grew up in Franklin County primarily. So I grew up in the town of Fairfield. I went to high school in St. Albans.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
went to UVM. I spent 2 years at school in Massachusetts, determined out-of-state tuition was too expensive.
Yep.
Moved back to Vermont, finished my degree at UVM.
What did you study at UVM?
Education.
Okay. Yeah, well, I can agree with you there. Actually, I spent my freshman year of college in Keene State in New Hampshire, and I pretty much determined this is really expensive, and I could get a better education back in Vermont.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of was my decision. So you've been in Vermont pretty much all your life?
Yeah, I did. After college, I spent about 10 years in the Boston area. That's where I first started. I got my first teaching job. So I did spend some time there, but I've always stayed in New England. I was always within a drivable distance of home. Even when I lived in Boston, I always wanted to come back to Vermont.
Yeah,
I missed the mountains and the lakes and the people, just the vibe here. So, and then I moved back here in 2015.
Okay. Yeah, we are very lucky to live here, aren't we? I mean, I was outside this morning, just like, I said to you before we just went live here on the show, I was like, oh, Vermont sucks. And you're like, no, it doesn't. Come on.
No.
And I was like, yeah, you're totally right. It's just sometimes it's a little bit frustrating, as you probably know. So let's talk about the Libertarian Party.
Sure.
I think a lot of people have misconceptions about the Libertarian Party, and I'm sure you maybe agree with me on that.
Well, I think especially in a state like Vermont, a lot of people are what I call closet libertarians.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Big time.
I think that a lot of people are libertarians. They just don't know enough about what libertarianism is.
Sure.
And I think by and large, the majority of Vermonters are not politically active at all whatsoever. I think that part of the reason that you mentioned that Vermont sucks, I think there's a minority of folks who are politically active, and that minority is what makes the decisions for the majority of the state.
Yeah.
So when I think about the landscape of Vermont, you still have a lot of folks who are very down to earth, very agricultural, may not be terribly educated, but are educated on the things that they know about, whether it's fishing, hunting, farming,
absolutely.
All of those things, right?
What does education even mean?
There's a wealth of education there, right? But those folks typically aren't the ones that are moving forward into politics. They're not the ones that are keeping up on current politics. They're not even the ones, I don't even know that they necessarily go to the ballot box. So
nope, they don't.
The folks that are voting are the ones who are more educated and more in, if I can call any town or city in Vermont an epicenter, more in the epicenters of Vermont. So
sure.
You look at, Burlington, Middlebury,
Montpelier,
exactly, Brattleboro perhaps. And I feel like it's the folks that live in those more populated, more educated areas. And by and large, a lot of those folks are not actually native Vermonters. They're people who have moved here, whether it was within their lifetime or their parents moved here. You even look at Bernie Sanders, love him or hate him. He's been here a long, long time, for decades, but he's not from Vermont. He's born and raised in Brooklyn. Long Island. He's a New Yorker.
Yeah, I believe he was born and raised in Brooklyn. I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
But I couldn't agree with you more. I think that it would be so interesting to know the statistics, like, of people out there that just, like, a lot of them are the biggest talkers too. They talk all this or that, the other thing, but then they don't go out and vote. So
yeah,
I think that's a problem that we deal with not just here in Vermont, but ultimately across the nation. And it seems like, and we can talk more about this, of course. It seems like it takes somebody like Donald Trump to get those people out to vote, which is somewhat concerning, as we were talking about.
It is.
Yeah. So just a little bit more on that, though. How did you, before we get to that, I know we want to talk about that. I think everybody wants to hear about it. That's one of the reasons
We're
why.
Chomping at the bit.
I know, yeah, we are. Well, it's one of the reasons Guy actually asked me to have you come down and come on the show, because he's like, oh, wow, somebody in Vermont was there. We want her to come talk. So anyway, we'll get to that. But how did you end up? So talk to me a little about your political journey. How did you end up in politics, and how did you end up with the Libertarian Party of all places?
Great questions. Okay, so politically, typically, I've been all over the map. I was a voter when I lived in Massachusetts, and I've always been a voter since I turned 18. I just think I always kind of felt like it's important to vote, especially as a female, because people fought so hard for the right to vote. And I feel like that's something that we don't really talk about, or it's really interesting, actually, that the last election cycle was the centennial celebration of women gaining the right to vote in the United States.
That's right, 2020.
Yeah, it's wild. And even, with that, you have Kamala Harris, who's the first female vice president. And there was so little that was said or done to memorialize that. Like, there were no big displays of.
You're actually so right now that I think about that.
There was nothing. It was silent. It was deafening. Like, there was nothing to say. Like, it's been 100 years since women have had the right to vote, and now we have a woman who's standing in this the second highest seat of the land.
Yeah.
There was nothing, and so I feel like it is important to exercise our right to vote, because not all of us, whether female or whether person of color, we've not always had the right to vote. So I think it's important that we do exercise that, even if sometimes we feel like it's futile. And I got to the point in my political journey that I did feel like I'm like, red man, blue man, at the end of the day, it all kind of seems the same, because if I even look at my life right now, we're practically 4 years through a Biden administration. My life is not all that different right now as it was when we were 3 or 4 years into a Trump administration. Like, things don't really change that much administration to administration. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that, because really the powers that be are above even whoever is the president. It has to do with the corporations and the lobbyists and the other interests that really are the ones that rule this country. And then the president's kind of just a figurehead. It's
an illusion of choice, as we all. I mean, that's something I think we're all Americans, not all, but people are really starting to say, wait a minute.
Two wings, same bird.
Yeah, and I will push back just a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying this as somebody who's a Trump supporter. I'm not, but I would make the argument, and we should definitely get more into this, because I think there's a lot to be said. I would make the argument the country was doing great in 2020 until COVID happened. And can you really say that's because of the president, because of his choices, the things that he was doing? I believe that there was some things that, yes, there was some things that he was doing that were better. But that is also what happened during COVID, is one of the reasons why I'm not a Donald Trump supporter. And you just told me the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I want to hear a little bit more about that from your perspective. Why don't you support him? What was your problem with him with COVID?
I think that for all the bravado that he puts forth and all of his braggadociousness, like, I feel like when it push came to shove, the man really didn't have the gumption or the balls, if you will, that he claims to have had. Like, he didn't stand up, to anything. And no matter how people feel about the lockdowns and the COVID restrictions and the way everything went, like whether people fully agree with that and think that was absolutely the right thing to do and we needed to do that to suppress the illness or whatever, there were countries that didn't do it at all. Yeah. And those countries, especially in Northern Europe, fared very well, both health-wise and economically. Yeah. Like, they didn't shut down. Sweden, right. Their kids weren't forced to, be in seclusion or wear masks or all of that. And even now, like, I've checked in with friends who work in education, and they say that the speech issues and the reading issues and the social issues that are with the kids that had been the masked kids, because you think about kids that were young kids in 2020, right? For several years, they spent years, it really disrupted their early childhood experience.
It was awful.
In how they relate to people and how they see faces and speak and all of that. So there were a lot of secondary and tertiary
externalities.
Exactly. Things that happen that, that we maybe didn't anticipate. But be that as it may, I don't feel like he stepped up and said like, nope,
No,
like we're not going to do
agree.
this. He kind of just rolled with it. And he did put Fauci into place. And he claims still to this day that his greatest accomplishment as president was Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah.
And those that die-heartedly support him will say, oh, he does that for optics. He does that for optics.
Yes.
Well, if you're someone that believes that the vaccine may not have been the healthiest choice for people, and if you're someone that believes that the vaccine is harming people, why would you want to still claim that that's your greatest accomplishment as president? That we've got all these turbo cancers now, people dying of all kinds of stuff. Like,
yeah.
Why would you want to say like, oh yeah, that's all me, that wrote out on my watch, that wouldn't have happened, we wouldn't have had it so quickly if it wasn't for me? Like, that's not something that's not something to be proud of.
Well, I completely agree with you on that. Like I at that point in time, I liked him. I've never considered myself a Trump supporter because I hate the connotation with that, Trump train and all that bullshit. Sorry, Guy. Guy hates it when we swear. That's just
okay.
Yeah. But I occasionally do. So sorry. But anyway,
put a quarter in the swear jar.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. He's watching. He's probably laughing. But that's where I never was big on him. And then Grandpa, we're live.
Hey, Grandpa.
Get out of here. Yeah, I'm on the internet right now.
We're on the World
We're
Wide
on
Web.
the World Wide Web. See, this is the thing with Bean Studios. Anybody can just walk in at any time.
That's it.
Just tell them Grandpa says hello.
I will. I think they heard you. Anyway, I never liked the connotation that went with him and being that. But up to that point, when all that happened, I was basically just like, yeah, no, this guy's, there's something about him. He's involved in a different, I don't know. What do you think it is?
I feel like his followers are almost like I don't know. It's almost like the way people used to faint over Elvis Presley back in the day. Like there's some sort of fanaticism there that to me is just abnormal, especially for a politician.
It's demagoguery.
Like, well, yeah, I mean, I understand when, like young girls are all excited about the latest boy band or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But when you see his rallies or the folks that really support him, they are seriously like, it's not just MAGA, they're gaga over him. And that to me is like,
it's bizarre.
It's bizarre. And it's a little disconcerting because you're like, how does he, like, you all are like under some sort of hypnosis or spell. Like he's like, you're crazy for him. And I don't, and in that, the danger in that is, those folks aren't thinking critically. They think that he can do no wrong. And that's why they can be dismissive of his COVID policies. They can be dismissive of some of his support of Israel and some of the stuff that's going on over there. They can
justify anything.
Exactly. They can be dismissive of things. And that to me, it harkens to like Hitlerianism. Like it harkens to me to like a figure who's so built up in people's minds and hearts. And they have like, they pegged him as the savior, the savior of themselves. Their lives are.
Well,
he's going to save our country. He's going to save the economy. He's going to save the children. He's going to save. And I'm like, no, he's not. And in that, I feel like it breeds a complacency too, because if you're expecting that guy to do it,
for sure,
if Trump's going to come in and ride in on the white horse and save the day, then you can just sit back and play the part of damsel in distress. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to be active.
Remember that's so true. When I was in college, that's when like the QAnon thing was going on. I remember like very interesting in all honesty, and there was obviously some connection to
that's a weird rabbit hole.
Yeah, it is, but there's obviously some connection to his administration. Like there's no way that there wasn't. You don't think so?
I don't know. It's hard to know.
I followed it pretty closely for a while.
It's possible, but it's really hard to know what corner of the internet that came and at what point it maybe derailed and somebody just sort of like started to run with it and it was no longer connected to like actual information.
Oh, I think that
it's so cryptic and it's so weird.
Cryptic, but there was some of them were like, and this is true. I mean, the coincidences were just uncanny. Like there was times where it was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
So and I'm not saying this as people saying, like, guys, go follow QAnon. Like this is legit. I'm saying it in the sense where it was such a powerful psyop, in my opinion.
Yes.
That it was like, yeah, exactly that. I mean, I remember the times thinking like, yeah, this country sucks, but you know what? That Trump, he's gonna solve it.
Yeah.
They're thinking, but now I'm realizing even more so with what they're doing with, and I do think he's somehow in on the whole thing because what they're doing now with the convictions and when they arrested him, obviously, too, that was very symptomatic to the entire country of where things are headed. And now the way that he's being propped up by some influencers and media heads as some sort of like Christ-like figure, that to me
that just
really
gives me chills.
It makes me really. It's like well, wait a minute. I mean, there's no comparison. Like in my opinion,
Antichrist.
Yeah, well, that's what a lot of people are saying, and
it gives a real icky vibe.
Well, that's my point though, and I'm not the person who's been thinking. I follow some other people who've been warning of this happening for a really long time. Like, what are they actually trying to accomplish with this man? So. I guess, I'm somebody who thinks, the convictions, I think the arresting him, I think it's all a bunch of BS.
Oh, of course. It's all optics.
It's all optics. It's all a show. And it's enjoy the movie.
Exactly. It's all show.
But that's the thing. So it's like, okay, so what is this and what are they doing going forward?
I mean, if we want to go down conspiracy theory lane, we
Let's
can.
do it. We absolutely
am I here to be considered a credible, reliable?
I think we're allowed to talk about whatever we want. I mean,
are we going down the rabbit holes?
I think we should go down the rabbit holes because I think there's a lot of people that are questioning the same things right now. And we have a lot of people that are viewers, by the way, that are Trump supporters. So
okay, well, I think when we zoom out, right, back to some of the things that we were already saying, I think that Trump's cut from the same fabric that he says he is there to stop. He is the swamp. He's like the head swamp creature. He's like the swamp creature king, okay? And anyone who can't see that, they just have to take their rose-colored glasses off. Like, you look, okay, you go back and you look at who he's done business with, who bailed him out when he had his bankruptcies. Yep. You look at who he's tied in with, the Russian mafia, different groups. I mean, that's where his ties to Russia come from. When he divorced his wife, right, he put her under a gag order that she couldn't receive her alimony if she spoke anything about like their marriage, what was happened between them in their marriage, what he did, his business dealings, nothing. If she spoke a word of it, she wouldn't get her alimony. So what then would you want her to be under absolutely silenced for? You know what I'm saying? Like, then she goes on to marry someone who's very affiliated with the Russian mob. He ends up having her throw that wedding at his property in Mar-a-Lago, right? So, like, oh yeah, you can marry this Russian mob boss. That's cool. Like, right? I'll throw the wedding. I'll throw the wedding at Mar-a-Lago. Guess who's invited? Ghislaine Maxwell, because of course she is, right? Yeah. So it's like, so here he is, hanging out with the Russian mafia at his Florida property. Ghislaine Maxwell is there. I mean, they're all the same characters and the same stories, and you think somehow he's different. And he even says it, like when Ghislaine was sentenced, he's like, well, I wish her well. People are like, oh, he's saying that sarcastically. I'm like, no, I really don't think he is. Like, I think she was a friend of his. Yeah. They've spent time together. Yeah. And he wishes her well.
Same as Hillary Clinton, too,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many photos of the Clintons and Trump hanging out with them back
playing
in the 90s.
Golf. Yeah. Exactly. Like, they're all cut from the same fabric. They're all from the same pool. And so I think that the powers that be that are even above, like those that are really pulling the strings, because at the end of the day, Trump is just a puppet. Biden's a super duper puppet. Yeah. I mean, even Obama's a puppet.
There's levels to how much they're puppets. Exactly. I think that Trump probably has some more. He has less of a leash than Biden. I mean, Biden is even.
He's so incompetent. He has to be on a tight leash. But
Trump, at least, I think he has some sovereignty. It's not as much as.
It is, but it's not. Yeah. At the end of the day, I think that those that he has agreements with, they want him to be able to fulfill whatever he's supposed to fulfill under those agreements.
Yeah.
And so they don't want, like, so they're going to keep him where they want him to be. I remember seeing on some documentary, I don't remember who it was, but definitely the bad guys, they're like, well, Trump's worth more to us alive than dead. Like, that's why that's why there's never been an assassination attempt. Like, he's not going to get assassinated because they want him in position. They want him to fulfill the role, right? If he was really like the guy that they hated and they really didn't want in there, they would JFK his ass.
Yeah.
Just quarter in the swear jar.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of people that think that could happen potentially. I mean, I think it potentially could too, but you don't think so?
No, I don't think so, because at the end of the day, I think it's it's all an illusion. At the end of the day, he's one of their guys, and they do that. They play both ends against the middle, and that's been a tactic that's been going on for hundreds of years. I mean, you can go back and see this with
thousands of years.
Well, exactly, but you can see it clearly with like the Rothschild banking during even like the Napoleonic Wars and stuff. They played both sides of against the middle in order to move assets where they needed to move assets, in order to conglomerate.
They did the same thing in World War II.
Yep, World War II. Then you look at all of the assets that were moved and conglomerated during COVID, all the businesses that shut down, all the other businesses that grew out of COVID, you know, how, whether it was in real estate with BlackRock, with Amazon, with all these different, I mean, there was definitely moves happening through all of that, that were very well planned and well orchestrated.
So I do have some comments I want to read. We always read the comments. That's one thing we're really passionate about here. It's always very fun. Let's see. BB writes, not an Orange Man apologist, but his lockdowns were not his fault. Each state had their own rules. That is true. Let's keep going here. Let's see. Timothy Page writes, that's the reality of the media's portrayal of politics now. One candidate is Jesus, the other is Satan. which is which just depends on the channel. It's a good point. Judith McLaughlin writes, do you think, and this is a really good question, do you think perhaps that we are concentrating on the man when we should be concentrating on his supporters or the issues? Take away Trump and his supporters will simply find someone else. What do you make of that?
Yes, but no. I do think he fulfills a vacuum. I don't think that there's been someone quite like him that stepped up. And I think that his supporters really do. I mean, I can't think of a Republican or a GOP candidate that's kind of gained quite the following
there's nobody.
He has. I mean, I can't think of any other GOP candidate or hopeful anywhere that has, like, he's got this, I hate to say rabid, but this rabid following. Like, people are, they're crazy for him. And I don't, I think that they need someone to kind of be the tip of the spear for that group.
Yeah.
And
they do.
And he's fulfilling that. And I do think that, I mean, again, you go back, what reasons I distrust him. I mean, I look at his dealings with the whole January 6th stuff and all of that. Like, at the end of the day, he could have pardoned people before he left the presidency, and he didn't.
Why?
Exactly.
I literally have no idea why.
And if you look at the people he did pardon and you go back and you look at like what their crimes were and like who they were as people, they're kind of douchebags. Like they're not guys that you're like, oh yes, I'm so glad that guy got pardoned. Like he really deserved the pardon. Over. Right. Yeah. And then you look at the folks like, and this is okay. So maybe he couldn't have presidentially pardoned them, the January 6th folks. If I was Trump and that was me and those folks were going down for basically a situation that, whether you think he instigated it or not, whatever, knowing that it centered around me, I would have used my own resources, my own money, my own lawyers, my own everything to do everything I could to help those people overturn their sentences, get out. Like, we have young men who literally have killed themselves from being imprisoned and treated the way they've been over the January 6th thing. Like, there's just there's no excuse. I can't overlook it.
Yeah, he's done a lot that's been very damaging to the country. Lambert Salty writes, remember, Trump did not force the jab on anybody, and Biden in his clown show did! ! Yeah, I get that is true. He didn't force it, but he did claim it was his greatest contribution as president, the Operation Warp Speed.
Correct.
Yeah. So you were at the Libertarian National Convention on Memorial Day.
Yes. Talk
to us about it. What was that like? Trump was there.
Okay. So
did you meet Trump?
I didn't meet Trump, but I got fairly close. I mean, I have some videos on my phone. Well, we'll start at the beginning. So you had asked earlier how I got into libertarianism, and I said,
sure.
Well, I used to vote kind of all over the board, and then eventually I was approached to join the Libertarian Party. And at first I was just like, at that point I was just kind of like in a politically like burned out place. I was just like, ugh.
Yeah. Like,
there's no point. Like, why spin our wheels? Like, why put time, effort, money, resources, energy into like we didn't vote ourselves into this mess. We're not going to vote ourselves out of it. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
But then as I started to kind of spend time around libertarians and spend time around just the concepts. I was like, this does align with what I feel. For those of you who don't really follow libertarianism or don't know, libertarian is very much about individual rights and freedoms, and voluntarism. So that means like the state should never force one to do anything. Like whether it's pay taxes should not be forced. We shouldn't be forced. Like we should like volunteer our resources or our time towards bettering our communities. That should be done like on a voluntary basis and not an enforced basis. And in that, like at the end of the day, our individual liberties and rights should be upheld above all else, as long as those rights aren't superseding or injuring someone else. So we have the NAP, which is the non-aggression principle, basically saying like we aren't to be the aggressors. We have the right to defend ourselves. We're very big on Second Amendment rights, but we have the right to defend ourselves if we have been aggressed against, basically. We don't have the right to go and take someone else's property or take somebody else's anything by force or be forceful. And that's why we're very anti-war. We don't believe in foreign involvement with war. You have the right to defend yourself if you've been attacked, but you don't have the right to go on the offensive. Okay. Basically, in that. So it's very like, peace loving, non-aggression, and just upholding one's rights and the rights across the board. If you want to grow weed, grow weed. If you want to marry someone who's the same gender as you, go for it. Like that doesn't hurt anybody. As long as what you're doing isn't like aggressing somebody else, like you have the right to do it, or
costing people something.
Yeah. And in that, it makes there's space for everybody. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
There's space for everybody. And
this doesn't sound too good though for business.
And what I mean? Yeah.
It's just
because we're not about Big Brother, and we're small government, small taxes, and where if you're gonna place importance on government, it's at the local level. It's your local city council, it's your local town hall, it's your local school board, it's your local mayor, it's your that's where it's. In the end of the day, like those are the people in the positions who make decisions that are going to affect you more directly than what's happening even at the federal level.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's the big, that's like big emphasis of mine just overall. Like I talk about that all the time. I think it's very important that you get. I've run in local elections. I ran for state senate in 2022 because that's what I saw is this is one way that you could really have a local impact that will help people.
Absolutely.
We have a question from BB. He writes or she writes. I don't know. What are your thoughts on your party's nominee?
We can get there.
Okay, let's keep moving. Let's get back to where we were.
Back to where we were. Okay.
We were on Trump.
So, I mean, I knew it was going to be interesting. From like at first when I heard that Trump was coming, I was a little disappointed because I was like, oh man, like this is just going to make us look like a branch of Republicanism, and we're not. And this is just going to make us look like we're like a GOP light. A lot of people think libertarianism is GOP light because we support the Second Amendment, because we're about constitutional rights. And for some reason, if you're into the Constitution, that makes you a GOP or a Republican, which is just kind of funny. Yeah. So because of the emphasis on individual rights and freedoms, people automatically kind of put us in that category. But the thing is, it swings both ways. That means, too, that we support you marrying who you want to marry, which most conservatives are not too comfortable with, or we support you having rights to your own bodily autonomy, also something that a lot of conservatives aren't too crazy about. So in that, I was kind of concerned about how having Trump there would look. But
optics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Optics. At the end of the day, though, I feel like it was a good thing because it elevated the Libertarian Party. It kind of put us on the map. The next morning, we were trending across all newspapers. The next morning, we woke up and it was just every newspaper, USA Today, CNN, the BBC, AP, everybody had an article about how Trump was at the Libertarian National Convention and he got booed.
I see exactly what you're getting at those, because they were trying to turn around and paint it as that. It's Libertarian Party they're MAGA. Right? Is that?
Well, no. I mean, I thought that that's the way it was going to go, but the Libertarians really pushed back on him being there, and that's where I think it made that distinction. Because all of the media outlets picked up on the fact that he was filleted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was kind of great to see, because I feel like he often speaks in front of audiences that are very adoring of him, and he doesn't get that kind of pushback. And so, the day of his event, we all had to go through security. I mean, I waited in a security line for, I don't know, probably over an hour. On the one hand, I was glad to have seen him in the scenario that I had because it wasn't a giant, huge stadium. It was like a convention center room. So it was a smaller environment. And I wasn't surrounded by a bunch of like people who were just, high on the MAGA. So I wasn't exactly. Yeah. There were a couple of those, like there was a separate line for those folks, but by and large, the majority of the room, we got precedence. So basically the majority of it was libertarians that were there. And so we went through security. I mean, they took everything away from us. Water bottles, people had rubber chickens. Most of those got taken away. I guess at least one got snuck in because there's an image of a rubber chicken kind of crossing the scene. It was kind of funny, the screen. They took away pretty much everything that we had. They wouldn't let us in the room with much. But I got in and I went straight to the bar. There was a bar in the room, and I was like, man, if I'm going to have to.
Yeah, if I'm going to be here.
I'm going to be here. Like,
oh, my goodness.
I need a drink. So he was announced. He came out. He began speaking. And, I feel like there's things he could, obviously, he didn't do anything to butter us up, really. He did nothing to affirm us as libertarians or to kind of like, he did nothing to really affirm what we believe or kind of identify with us at all, basically. Sure. Like he just came in and started talking, true to Trump, about how awesome he was and all, basically his greatest hits album. Like, like because of, when I was president, this and this was going great and the economy was great and the border was great and everything was great and I was great. And then, he just went through his litany, his laundry list of all his greatest hits. And of course, we're just sitting there like,
yeah,
okay,
sure,
buddy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sure, buddy. And then after he finishes his laundry list of how great he is, he's like, so I'm here to ask you to basically ask for your nomination as the Libertarian candidate. And everybody that's when the crowd went crazy. They were like, no way. They were like, absolutely not. Like,
wow.
Yeah, no way.
And what did he say? There was one clip I saw where he was like, what did he say? He said, he was like, you guys keep polling at 3% or something
exactly.
like that. Yeah.
He did. And he was. That his response to our booing was that we keep polling at 3%. But I'm like, that's what we've always gotten. And we don't really like it to us. That's fine. Like Are
you going to pull up a video?
I can pull up a video.
If you want, I can email it to me and I can try to pull it up here on the show. I think that's a possibility.
Let me see which one I want to pull up for you. But
sure. While you're doing that, I'm going to just read a couple of the comments.
Sure.
We'll get to this. Judith McLaughlin writes again, as a libertarian, what are your thoughts on the current foreign policy? And BTW, thank you for your interview! ! We'll get to that. Wizard writes, RFK's beliefs align much more with libertarian values than any other of the main candidates. And I would say, fair to agree with you on that. He's going for the independent thing, though. And let's see. More populated. Nope, that's it. That's all we really have for comments right now. However, I did see those were mainly like the clips that I saw is people just saying like we don't want Trump to be, and how interesting it was for people to have the opportunity to see Trump in that light where it was a crowd of people that were just like booing him.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's got to be hilarious.
I'm gonna send you a clip right here, and you can see from that clip how close I was to the stage because I took this with my phone, and I'm gonna send it to you.
Cool.
What's the best?
The one that we were using, Paul BEAB. I think I emailed you once there.
But I'm sending it to BEA. Paul BEAB.
Yep, 16@gmail.com. Anyone out there listening, feel free to email me anytime. Paul BEAB 16@gmail.com.
Okay, I'm sending it to you from a different.
And I'm just going to say
email.
quickly too while we're doing this, if you are watching live on YouTube, if you're watching on Twitter, if you're watching on Facebook, wherever you're watching, be sure to click the subscribe button, click the like button, like this video, repost it, retweet it. Please get us out there. I don't do this enough. I always make the mistake of not, doing a little station identification here.
Oh yeah.
And
Go for it.
and getting it a little further out there. So please share this, subscribe. I think we're at like 402 subscribers on YouTube right now, and we really want to get up to 500. That's a goal of ours. So if you can help us do that in any way, we would greatly appreciate it. So.
Okay, I think I'm sending it to you.
Okay.
Oh, I must connect to a Wi-Fi to send it. Hold on.
Oh my goodness.
Hold on. All right, let's see. Maybe. Wait. Let me see. Let me see if I can just send it to you. Hold on.
Well, you could text it to me potentially.
I'm gonna try. We're gonna get it.
We're gonna get it, guys. You need to see this. We probably should have done this before we went live, but you know what? It's totally okay. We're doing. This is live radio. This is what happens. This is real life right now. So enjoy.
Okay. Well, let's see if I can send it to you in a text instead.
Wizard writes again, talking about RFK, which is interesting because he's a classic Democrat and libertarians are usually more conservative.
I think that's a misconception. So I really don't think that libertarians are necessarily more conservative. I look at libertarians and say that we kind of we draw from both sides of the aisle. And I think in a lot of ways that makes us more diverse in our demographics, as in like in our political demographics. Because we appeal to the folks, we appeal to folks who want liberty, whether it's civil liberties, and the civil liberty folks are generally more liberal in that, they're looking for, people's individual rights in regards to marriage, in order, growing marijuana, whatever those,
Sure.
So that we appeal to those, to that crowd for some of those things. And then we appeal, of course, to folks who are more constitutional. I don't even like the word conservative, more constitutional minded.
I know. But that even that word, the right has co-opted as somehow their word.
Crazy.
And if you start talking about the Constitution, then people are like, oh my God, you're a Trumpster. Like you just can see so clearly like what they're trying to do to the Constitution and the nation ultimately. And
it's their one fail-safe. So if they can dismantle it or rework it in some way, or get us to, start to not fiercely protect it, like then
that's what they're trying to do.
Exactly. It weakens. It's the one thing that sets us apart from any other country on earth. It's why America has been, a beacon in a lot of ways to a lot of other nations. No other nation has that protection in place that safeguards people's rights the way we do.
No, and I think other nations have tried to copy it, but ultimately, because we were the first to do it and we didn't have these nefarious people in the background pulling the strings when they first made it happen, which isn't necessarily true, by the way, just saying. I mean, there's always some people, but I think it's a pretty special thing that we have going in this country. And I also want to point out, too, I know quite a few Democrats that are, say, conservative and moderate in some ways, and they actually would more consider themselves as libertarians more than you might think. I mean, I know even like the governor, for example, he is somewhat of a libertarian flair. And maybe you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I do. And I think this is where we've gotten so polarized. Like anybody who doesn't toe the strict conservative line is somehow a rhino.
Yeah.
Like they get painted with the rhino brush. Like as soon as they start to show, and any sort of deviance to like the hardcore conservative line, towing that line, they're now a rhino. And so that gets thrown around all the time too. It's kind of like a slur. So it's interesting where we're at in politics right now.
Looks like we're gonna have another cameo, another family cameo. Yes, sir. For those of you who are viewing, Anne has her son here. And he's been waiting for probably.
He's been patient.
He's been very patient, but now he's had enough. Here he is. You're on our show, man. You're on the camera.
Oh, hey, welcome. You coming to say hi? Mm-hmm. You want to come sit for a minute? You can come sit.
I do have. Okay, so you sent me the video.
Okay, so you got the video. I think that's a shortened version. So to answer a few questions that were asked earlier, let's get through Trump. So Trump was raucously booed. If you can play the video, then folks will get a chance to see that. He was, of course, raucously and I won't say righteously, but raucously booed for the fact that no, we're not going to give you the Libertarian nomination. Like that's crazy talk. What's interesting though is the next day we did begin our voting for the nomination for the Libertarian candidate. And I think at the first round of voting, there was some like 907 people who voted. And of those 907 votes, only 6 were Trump write-ins. The other 901 folks did not vote for Trump.
Interesting.
I mean, I can pull that up right now, the slate on how that went. So that kind of gives you an idea of the folks that were there and of the folks that were, delegates tasked with making the decision of voting in our next candidate. Only 6 people voted for Trump, so he was eliminated that first round. Obviously, like it was hardly even a question. To answer the RFK, I want to see how many people voted for RFK. There is, if you go.
Just right down.
Yep.
Yeah, there might be somebody in that can show you, that can help you find the way. Okay.
Okay. So looking back at when I look at how the voting turned out that first round, Donald Trump got 6 votes. Stormy Daniels got 1 vote.
Of course she did. They can't help themselves. That's pretty funny.
And Robert F. Kennedy got 19. So out of, again, 907 folks voting, RFK only got 19 votes and Trump got 6. So they were both eliminated within that first round. And then it came down basically to our Libertarian, top contenders.
It will be the first time the
So
think of this.
someone had asked
First
about how
time
I
in
feel
US
about
history that a presidential
Nominee.
nominee.
of
Not
a
my
rival
favorite,
party will
but at the
address
same
the
time,
convention of a
I mean, it
party
is what it
that
is.
presumably gathering to
Things
nominate its own candidate.
Went long
Now
that day.
think
So
you
I
should
left. I had to catch
nominate
my
me
flight
or at
back
least vote for me, and
that
we
evening
should
at like 10
wait
o'clock. I figured business would be done if, I had to leave the convention by 8 and get to the airport to fly out by 10.
Sure.
It just dragged on and on and on. When I left at
You
like
heard
dinner
those
time, I left
words.
I think around 7.
Nominate me or
The
vote.
voting
Vote
was
for me.
still happening. We had already gone through like 5 rounds of voting. We started voting at 9 in the morning. So we went all day with this,
Because
like
we
just
have to
round
get
after
rid
round
of the
after
worst
round.
president
Basically, like
in
we put
history.
all the candidates in a
And
funnel and just funnel it down to like
It's
whoever comes out the bottom. And it didn't shake out the way I would have wanted, but I can say there are a few things that, always looking for the silver lining, I can say that the nominee, Chase Oliver, is somebody who has been to all 50 of the United States in his campaigning, which is not anything that either Biden or Trump can say. So in that, I can say that it feels like he cares about Americans, or he cares to get to know at least all the 50 states, including Alaska and Hawaii and
Does
all
anyone
of them.
campaign there? I've
Exactly.
always wondered that.
So he cares enough to spend the money and the time to go and meet with Americans all over the U.S.
That is presumably gathering to nominate its own
Sit in that chair.
candidate.
You can sit here.
Now I think you should nominate me.
We make
or
it
at
work,
least vote
everybody.
for me,
It's not
and
easy
we
being
should win.
I have my grandfather popping in. He's hanging around. She's got her kid here. We're just trying to.
So
Oh, okay. So I'm hearing now that the Trump audio is playing over the back of her. Okay. So I'm trying to get this figured out, folks.
It will be the first
We're a
time
little
the
bit
US
distracted, as you maybe
Okay.
can tell.
So hopefully.
Okay. So I'm hearing now. Okay. The Trump video. I think I should be able to get it to play here, folks. Let's see. Hold on a second. I'm trying like heck. See, you can't say how. Oh, whoops. Sorry.
75 cents for the swear jar.
Come on now. So this is a new thing I've tried. I've never done this before. Tried to play something
Okay.
as I was live. So I don't know why, but it's giving me a lot of trouble here. And
You can
First time
upload it
in
later.
US history
yeah, we
that
might
a
have to post it
presidential
somewhere
Yeah.
for people to
candidate
see, because
of
it's
a
just it's
rival
not
party will
working. And
address
if the sound is still playing in the background, folks, please let me know, because I can't stand that if that's going on. I can't let that happen.
So ultimately,
Now I
obviously,
think
we
you
weren't
should
there to
nominate
elect
me
him
or at
as
least vote for me,
a nominee.
and we
And
should win
he did kind of mock us on the 3% thing. But at the end of the day, he needs that 3%, or he thinks he needs it, because he wouldn't have been there to kind of try to wine and dine us, although he didn't do much of that. He wouldn't have been there to try to get that 3% if he didn't feel like he needed it. So at the end of the day, like, what we had to offer was more important to him than what he had to offer us.
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, like, we're in the position of power. Like, we've been getting 3%. If we get another 3%, great. Like, at the end of the day, like, it's business. And it goes back to kind of what we were saying, that at the end of the day, it's really the powers that be that are in charge, and whoever their guy is for the job will be the guy until things really shift differently. For me, I kind of look at this year's elections and I'm like, dang, it really is like the definition of insanity, especially if you have Biden versus Trump again. It's like it's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results every time. And we're not going to get different results. We're going to get the same. And so for some people who say, oh, voting Libertarian is throwing your vote away, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I mean, if you really want to take like a defeatist stance, I mean, voting in general is throwing your vote away, because at the end of the day, if what we've alleged or, hinted at is true, then at the end of the day, it's their guy who wins anyway. So it doesn't matter who you vote for. You can vote for Stormy Daniels, like somebody did in the nomination rounds, right? Like,
yeah, it's
at the end of the day, like, what does it vote for Mickey Mouse or
whoever,
whoever? Because they're going to put in whoever their guy is, is going to be the one who ends up being the leader of the country. And in some ways that makes sense. Like if you,
yes.
like would you want the people deciding who's the leader of the free world? No, you're not going to leave that up to the people. People are fallible. We make mistakes. Like you're going to want to put the person in to that role that you want to be there. And if we're going to go back down conspiracy lane, like I do think they wanted 4 years of Trump. I think they wanted 4 years of Biden, because Biden could do certain things in a Biden administration that Trump couldn't really pull off and still maintain his same image.
Sure.
And then he'll come back in after Biden. I think that Trump probably will. And not because people vote for him or don't vote for him, because he's ultimately what the powers above the structure want. He'll come in and he'll carry on or continue on some of the things that were put into place under the Biden administration that he couldn't have done and still maintained his image. So
can you talk a little bit more about that real quick? I mean, we have maybe a couple minutes left.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about the powers that be, the power structure that exists above what we can see.
I mean, obviously, I don't know. Just because I'm a chair of a political
I
organization,
know.
I don't get secret memos.
Of course not. Of course not.
They don't send me secret updates.
I know, but what do you think that is? I guess.
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with, big business, corporations, and the folks that are behind big business. At the end of the day, money rules the world. It's not any individual person. It's not any individual ideal.
Sure.
It's money.
Yeah.
And he who has money or determines how the money gets spent, where it goes, controls everything, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at like part of one of the other videos I'll send you is everybody chanting "and the Fed, and the Fed, and the Fed," which is of course "and the Federal Reserve." So he who basically invents the money, prints the money, and determines where and what the money does, and all of that is he who runs the world. And for those who are, real control freaks, like once you own all the money and the assets and you can determine, then the next thing is to really like own what people do. And if you look at like the World Economic Forum or some
Sure.
of these entities that gather and make decisions on what they want the world to look like 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, I really think it's those folks who are making a lot of the decisions.
Yeah.
And those folks are deeply tied into all of the businesses that then kind of they map out how they want things to be. That funnels down even to our little old state, Vermont. Why do you think Vermont got so much money to improve like bike paths and to turn like old railroads into bike paths? Like I know it's like kind of dark to think in these terms, but they don't pump money and it's not for our recreation that they're doing that. They're not like, oh, Vermonters need more opportunities to have recreation.
Yeah.
Let's spend a bunch of money on repaving all these old rail lines into bike. It's for a couple of purposes. One, if you look at the Agenda 2030 and the goals, right? They don't want people to own cars. They want there to be a day that you have to get on your bike, and if you need to go to grocery store, you're going to have to bike 20 miles to get there and back. So you're going to need a bike path to get there. Or you're going to be part of like a ride share or car share program where your village has maybe 5 cars that then you all like sign up like, okay, Mildred's getting the car for Sunday and she's going to take a grocery trip and y'all give Mildred your grocery order. Or it's going to be robots that are literally delivering your groceries either by drone or by like
autonomous vehicles
or little like autonomous vehicles delivering your groceries. So basically they want you to be trapped in your homes. I mean, that's part of the whole Agenda 2030 stuff. Like, and that was kind of, they gave us a little soft taste of that during COVID, which is probably like one of the, other aims of the whole COVID narrative. And then the bike paths serve it's multi-purpose, right? One, the way that they've, kind of reworked all of those old rail lines, it's easier for them to put in another rail line if they needed to. So if and when the day comes that they want to start doing more by rail, whether it's passenger travel or moving goods by rail, the infrastructure is already there. The paths have been made and cleaned up and maintained for that to happen. But really it's also because they want less cars on the road and they want us,
I agree.
They want us biking. So you think about it in those terms, because, we got all this grant money to, to fix up. They don't care about our recreation. We've got plenty of places that we can go recreate in Vermont. Like, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with some sort of tie into a larger agenda. And it's the same thing with all the different affordable housing that's getting built and all these apartment complexes that are being built, and
the 15-minute city type
15-minute cities. It's all of that. But
we're not buying it. I'm telling you,
we're not buying it. So many
people they're like, this is so stupid.
Well, I noticed that Tesla stock is down. I just looked at that yesterday. It's like down to down. But it's interesting how, they are pushing this out, but the businesses that have basically banked on this and are banking on this and who are involved in these sectors are really the ones that are moving the agenda forward. And
so, like who, for example?
Well, BlackRock and
big time.
If you look, it's a pyramid. It really literally is a pyramid. Like everything, all the little businesses, if you start to look, like you can take something simple as like, this is wild, but I remember seeing a TikTok video where they broke it down. Like you could take something simple as like tampons. Okay. And when you start to look at, you think, we have all these different companies, you've got Playtex and Kotex and, like all these different Tampax. Why do they all have X's in them? I don't even know. But you've got all these brands.
We got SpaceX.
Exactly.
Actually,
you have all these different brands. But then when you start to look, all these brands are owned by subsidiaries that then own, and you look, and they were like, at the end of the day, there's only like 2 companies that produce tampons, like basically in the world. And you're like, wow, that's crazy, because they own all the other brands underneath them,
Yeah, of course.
And you find that with simple things, like even Ben & Jerry's. It's not owned by Ben & Jerry anymore. It's not even owned by the Ben & Jerry's board. It's owned by Unilever, and even they are trying to offload it. Ben & Jerry's Unilever doesn't want to carry Ben & Jerry's anymore
because they can't. It's gotten so insane.
I don't know. They're like we want you off, and within the next year, Ben & Jerry's is going to get sold to somebody else or restructure. Yeah. I don't know, but that's just interesting, right? But what started as a standalone business and then grew to epic, global proportions.
That's always what happens.
It's owned by Unilever, and then there's even folks who own Unilever, and as you keep going up, it ends up being just like how the media is owned by like 6 groups or entities. It's the same with basically every product out there.
Their tentacles are everywhere.
Exactly. For even the most basic stuff, like feminine hygiene products. At the end of the day, they're all owned by the same companies.
And we need to as much as possible. And let's talk just a little bit about solutions, right? I dig what you're saying a lot. Like I really think that
you can have me back on anytime.
You can come on anytime. Yeah. And we definitely are going to need to, but I think that what the point.
Could do like regular fireside chats.
Yeah, we could. We absolutely could. I just think that the points that you're making are like, I think it's really hard for a lot of people to go there with what we're talking about because it just touches parts of them that, it's really hard to crawl back from, and you're talking about tampons. Well, it's not just tampons. It's soap.
It's everything.
It's toothpaste.
Literally every product in your household.
Well, and that's the thing. And so I guess what I'm saying, though, is we got to find a way to create solutions and build a world that is parallel. And I think that's why the Libertarian Party is fairly attractive to me.
Well, that's why I have my kid here. We homeschool. I don't send him to school. And I think that more people need to kind of come up with the alternatives. Like, I'm not happy with public school and the way public school is going, so why am I going to send my kid into that? I'm not.
I just think that the thing is that people are so, like, the world has been a certain way for so long, and it worked pretty well for a long period of time, but especially post 9/11, which I was fairly young and during all that time, post 9/11, post the financial crisis of 2008, and now, of course, post COVID, we're starting to really be forced to reckon with what we're talking about, because everything's been centralized, everything's been centralized, and everything's just been like, and I think part of me even thinks the people at the top are like, they're putting the pressure on the masses to start taking a little bit more responsibility in their own hands. You don't think so? I do. I really do, because I think they're like, we can only freaking do so much for you all.
I don't know. I think, well...
Do you see what I'm saying?
But that's where they just call the herd.
Yeah, well,
right?
That's what they try to do.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, so like, I think they want to control. If you look at like a model like China, they are able to pretty well manage and control like billions of people, like down to like, and it's all based on the social credit score.
I know, which is
coming.
And
the folks they live and die by that.
Yeah.
And that affects every area of their life, like down to, you are tracked on your purchases. So if you purchase baby formula, that's considered like a good purchase, and you're given good social credit score for that. If you purchase beer, you're free to purchase the beer. But it's gonna ding your social credit. So even in that, they're incentivizing people to buy formula because it's good for your baby or your children or your grandchild, but don't buy the beer. And so, because there's no purpose in buying the beer. That's just a fun thing for you. You're not helping anybody. You're not nourishing somebody else with a beer. So even in that, like, you have to decide, like, is my social credit score good enough, high enough? Is it robust enough that I can purchase this beer, or like. So down to even like,
that's disgusting. Everyday
purchases, you have to think, like, do I have the social credit bandwidth to make this purchase, knowing that it's going to ding me, or do I forgo it? And but at the same time, the beer is still available. It's up to you whether or not you want to buy it. But
you can make your own choice, but there's
but
consequences.
Then everything, exactly, your children's future is dependent upon your social credit score, what schools they go to, what opportunities they're given, and that affects them economically and in the long run, like what kind of careers they're able to have, what level of income they're able to make. It all is tied into your social credit score. So yeah, you have the beer, but guess what? That means that Johnny may not be able to have access to whatever.
Well, we absolutely need to
sports teams or schooling, and so it's. Once you get people thinking along those lines, like you can pretty well control even large groups of heavily populated areas. Like that's what's so crazy about it. And a lot of it then is that it becomes just for fun. It's not even that fun. Just for fun, I've been reading the book 1984.
Yeah. Oh, it's a fun time.
It's a fun time. It's a fun read. It's a good poolside read.
Yes, it is.
But anyways, but you see even within that book that was written back in the 40s, like he had already thought through all of this, and the Chinese government has super implemented it almost to the degree that 1984 is. Like when it comes to the surveillance system and the thought police and the controlling at every aspect of your life, it's pretty crazy.
The more that we talk about this, the more that I'm like, man, I'm so thankful that I'm just not somebody that wants to control other people.
Right.
What a stress.
Exactly. What a stress.
Like, you're just constantly worried about controlling the masses. Oh my God.
Exactly.
Sounds horrible.
It is. But you were talking about solutions. So how can we be more solution minded? I mean, I think a lot of it is withdrawing as much as you possibly can from what I call the system. And for me, part of that is homeschooling my kid. Growing my own food. If you're not in a place that you can grow your own food, supporting local farmers and growers in your area that do grow their own food. Because absolutely. I think gaining control of our food chain, our food source, our food network is really important.
That's the biggest one.
Food is life. Without food, we starve. And without food, our health goes down. And if we have to eat a bunch of bioengineered crap covered in pesticides and a peel and whatever else Bill Gates is coming up with, then that affects bugs. I know.
I saw a story in WCAX. They were talking about that the other day.
The crickets, they're coming for us.
It's like, what is wrong with everybody? What is wrong with you people?
But
who is going to eat bugs?
They will.
I'm not going to eat bugs.
But they won't tell you that it'll just be in your protein bar. You'll go and buy a power bar and you won't even realize one of the main ingredients is cricket powder. Well, whatever it is, I know. Your muscle milk that you're making after the gym, you won't even realize it, but they'll start lacing you with that stuff.
They are. They're like dirty drug dealers.
And what's nuts about it too is something like that. Like there aren't any long-term safety studies on what a diet that has, significant amount of bugs does to you. Like,
Yeah.
Like I'm sure back in the day, hunter-gatherer types, like every once in a while we'd pop a couple of bugs just to,
Pop a couple of bugs.
pop a couple of grubs in the mouth to keep it going, right? But it wasn't a diet where like bugs were, 20% of your overall intake or whatever. And I wonder at what point, because I've heard for some people, like if you have shellfish allergies, eating the bugs, not a good idea for you. If you have, there's certain, enzymes, proteins, things that bugs give off that we probably shouldn't consume in mass quantity. And who's doing the safety studies on this? And even if they were, would they release the data to us? Probably not. So they're just going to tell us to eat the bugs. And then, 50 years later, they're like, oh, sorry, you guys have all these health problems. We now realize that eating the bugs not such a great idea. Kind of like Crisco. They're like, Crisco, it's a better alternative. Eat it, eat it, eat it. It's good for you. It's going to reduce heart disease. It's better than animal fats. And now they're like, about that. Like,
we were wrong.
They're like, basically, it's plastic for your body. Sorry, guys. Like.
So we have a couple comments, and I think we need to wrap this up because I got to get the Creemee stand open. But let's see. If you look, Judith McLaughlin writes, if you look at the pyramid within media, you will find a few voices speak for the masses.
Of course.
Yeah, we would agree with you on that. And let's see, Mr. James 802. This is hilarious. He writes, "This sounds like a DNC talking point recap." You mean this conversation that we're having? Did you catch the last 20 minutes here?
Does he mean DNC is in Democratic National Convention?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. My guess is he's a Trump supporter, and no, I have no problem with that. You like who you like, and it's fine. But just the cognitive dissonance when people say I don't like Trump, for him then to say that this is a DNC recap, that just doesn't make any sense.
What if I told you I don't like Biden either?
Yeah.
What if I told you I think they're all nuts?
Yeah, and they are.
And they hang out on the same yachts.
Well, exactly.
And they party together
on the same islands.
In the same islands. Yeah. Exactly. So if
I'm not trying to be too hard on him for commenting, by the way.
It's the illusion of choice. And if Donald Trump was really a threat to the powers that be, the deep state, however you want to name them, they would have taken him out by now. He'd be a has-been. He'd be gone.
A lot of people say that
they would have JFK'd his ass.
Exactly.
They would not let someone like him with the following that he has be as wild and as rogue a card as he is for as long as he has, if he actually posed a threat to them.
So Judith McLaughlin also writes, in Vermont, we went from self-sustaining to government solves all problems. We need a healthy balance. And you know what? I think that's a really good place to end right there. I think you're absolutely correct. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about. We're kind of saying that there is a role for government, but there's also the need for self-sustainability and long-term thinking that's not dependent on any federal government or giant body or institution.
And tie back in the libertarian piece, like a lot of that is self-governance. Like libertarianism is all about self-governance. And if we can govern ourselves, our families, better, then we're healthier, stronger, more self-sufficient, and less in need of the government assistance and oversight. And I think, again, it ties back to being involved at the local level. So, red guy, blue guy, purple guy, orange guy, whoever ends up in the White House, at the end of the day, it is what it is. Yeah. But I think that where we can have a greater impact is at the local level.
Yes.
Get involved with your school board. That's your tax dollars are going to fund your schools. If you're not happy with the way kids, whether you have kids or don't have kids, you're retired, whatever, your money is still going to fund the schools. So if you aren't on board with, or if you're not even aware of how your money is being spent in the schools, well, first of all, get aware, get active, speak up. Say something about it, get involved, homeschool your kids. The more of us withdraw from that and say, you know what, I don't like how you're spending the money, so we're just going to do it our own way.
That is the big one, by the way, is the schools.
We'll start creating alternative systems that will work out the kinks.
Yeah.
And it may be hard at first to figure it out.
It'll be scary. I don't even think it'll be hard. It'll just be scary.
It's problem solving because we're so used to, like you said, doing things a certain way. It's just that shift.
Yeah.
And thinking differently about how we educate and thinking differently about a lot of things, how we get our groceries, right?
Yeah.
If you start buying locally. You may have to start buying things that are more in season. That may mean from October to January, you're eating a lot more squash than you ever wanted to. But guess what? That's what's in season locally.
It's how everybody used to do things.
Exactly.
And they seem to be okay. They're probably healthier.
Exactly. So I think that, it's kind of shifting. And if you're like, oh, well, I'm not in a place where I can grow my own food, or I'm older and I don't have the energy to do it, then partner with somebody who does.
Yeah.
Like, go find the local farmers, or partner with a young family or a young couple that has the space or the land or the energy to do it, and say, hey, listen, I can't afford to garden, but I would love organic produce. Like, can I throw money at you guys to grow a garden, and then I have some of your produce? There's always a way. And I think it's thinking outside the box to be more solution-minded.
Everybody needs to start thinking a little bit differently, and I think that we're going to be forced to.
And not pinning your hopes on any political figure to change
Trust in yourself.
The landscape. They're not going to change the landscape.
I agree. But we do need to wrap this up.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you so much again
You're
for coming
welcome.
down here. This was a great interview. We're definitely we need to do more.
Okay.
And hopefully we can even do a little better next time. I think we did okay today, but we had some things that we maybe...
Or we'll work it out.
We'll work it out. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming down. And thank you to everybody who is viewing on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you're watching. Thank you so much. And please be sure to like, subscribe, repost, whatever it is that you can do to help us spread this message. We would greatly appreciate it. So thank you so much for everyone for tuning in.